Hello. Blackstar Muzic here, and today what we'll be going over is my track The Goal. We'll be going over the mixing portions of it, and we're gonna, basically just see what that's about, see what I did, and I will be trying to add some timestamps as well to this. If I don't get them added right away, they will be added, within like an hour or so, or possibly two, depending on whenever this goes up and goes live. But I will get timestamps added so you don't have to waste time, going through it, because this possibly might be a bit long. I did a try one of these and it was like 35 minutes, so in order to save you from that, I'm doing one more try just to make sure, it comes out okay. But here we go. First things first, I want to go over groups because it's actually an integral part of how I do my music. And it's pretty different from what other people do. I'm pretty specific about, my groups and what's under them and how they're divided. And I do change this from time to time, as I showed off in my last video of how I make a simple melody. Check that out if you are curious. I will put a little time or a little exclamation point thing up in the top right. But yeah, let's get into this. We're going to be starting off with kind of the beginning here, which is the beginning of the track. It's the Pluck section, and it's pretty, different, pretty unique. I'm going to go over kind of what I did, and I will go over kind of the mixing principles behind it. What I did for synths, I will go over very lightly, just because this is not that type of video, but I will show that for this one just because it's a little bit different. As you can see, I have 3 instances of Spire. Each one is slightly different from the other, and they make up this sound here. Get off and show this. Let's mute 1 or 2. You see, they all kind of make up the sound. This is the top one, obviously. You got your little mids, and you got your lower end, and your bottom end of it. And also for this track, for this one, I have a separate sound as well. Let's go into this actual view. It makes more sense for trying to show this off at least. And here we go. Second part of it. We'll show off the second part of this. It's just a square. It's just there. It just highlights it and gives you that kind of uplifting, kind of bubbly effect. But yeah, all right, let's get into the mixing portion of this. You're going to see a lot of the same type of synthesizers and stuff here, not synthesizers, VSTs here, that I use for, EQ and all that good stuff. But let's get into what I do. For what I did here, as you can see for the main one, this is Pluck 1, the very first one you heard. Let's click here, maybe. Oops, I'm still on Pluck 2. That is my mistake. Here we go. See here, there's not much here. A little bit in the top end around 4K, a little bit in the bottom end around 1.4, and you take a little bit on the little, it's the upper mid-range, you could say, and then I cut off a little bit of the bass end of the sound as well. I could do that easily by, just turning down the bass end of the third synthesizer, but, yeah. But here's how it sounds without it. That bottom end just comes through too much, and it's not as bright. And what I like to do is cut off the mud of any of my synthesizers. Can't really hear it, but this is just unnecessary noise. Same up here with the top end. Just unnecessary noise. So I like to get rid of that on basically everything I can that needs it. Unless it's something that honestly doesn't need it at all, then I'll just, kind of leave it in there. But yeah, and I've also turned down my master a little bit, so it's not as loud as it was in my last video. I forgot to do that time. But yeah, and I have nothing here on the chords whatsoever. They are just, raw, if you will. There's a tool. And it just turns it down for this very intro section because it doesn't need to be as loud as it is for the drop. But yeah, that is all I've done there. Now, the actual main part of this is Neutron 2. It's what I put on the synth bus and or group, as you can see. It's pretty simple for, kind of what I do. Every kind of group has a Neutron 2 or something on it because it just allows me to mix how I want when it gets to the mastering stage, and I will go over that when I get there. Yeah, as you can see, I have 5 here, which is just, same way, the 25, I guess 2000 hertz, and you know, it's got an upward compression on it. I have another upward compression on this over here as well, and I have a downward compression towards the middle, you know, the lower, you know, bass end as well, and it just allows the track to flow together. Let's just solo this part here. See, it loses a little bit of its life without it. I also have a compressor on this as well. It just takes off what I really don't need, and it's just ever so slightly used. I mean, it's nothing crazy. The mid-range a bit more so, but you know, and it's what makes this sound up. But yeah, that's essentially how I start. That's essentially how I do every track, how I do every individual, you know, group setup. Everything gets done individually, and I will go into more depth in this in another video, but I will show it off to you a bit later here. But yeah, let's get back to what I was originally wanting to do, which is the groups. I do one here, which is called FX, which contains everything from the sweeps, kicks, drums, synthesizers, bass, whatever it is I need. I have drums and synths as well, which just contains the drums and synths. It completely forgoes the sweeps, down sweeps, FX, which is just like your snare rolls and stuff like that, crashes and booms or explosions, which is that kind of that bass drop that you hear when the music leaves the stage, as you can say. Each one has its own. You can go into in depth of what they are. They're all a bit different. All the stuff that happens inside the group is different per each track, but they all have a bass, you know, setup of lead 1 or Pluck 1, Pluck 2 type of a thing, and they all change from there. As you can see, like the bass line here, it's pretty simple on this. I mean, all I have is mainly the melody made on one track, and then I, you know, just dropped it down to a bunch of other tracks and used it that way. Sub, pretty simple for me. It's, you know, it's just the main sub setup here that I used, which is everything goes to the mids, because it's a sub. It doesn't need to go to the sides at all. I mean, at least that's in my opinion. I mean, you can add a little bit of a verb to it if you wanted to hit the sides ever so slightly, but I mean, I don't, unless I'm going to go for a distorted sound to the sub. But yeah, here's what I do for this, because it is kind of integral to how I get my subs to sound the way they do. Basically what I have is one here set to 0 in the octave, and it is just a sub. It's just a sine wave, FM sine wave, and it's got a little bit of, I don't think actually, no, this one doesn't have it. I usually do a little bit of a shaper on certain tracks, but not for this one. That's my mistake. And over here as well, I have a another one, which is, as you can see, 1 octave up. So that when it hits like a low note, and the low note doesn't have the power you would really want, it's nice to have another one going that is 1 octave above. So, I mean, it eliminates you having to have 2 stages of MIDI, you know, like MIDI on the, you know, C1 and MIDI also on C2 type of a thing. It just eliminates that, you know, being necessary, and you can just go with what you're going, because usually what I'll either do is take the regular bass line, like this, and I'll pull over the bass here. Yeah, pull this over, and you know, I'll extend it to just a 1-line bar, and then I'll put an LFO tool or a sidechain, whatever you want to use, on my basses, and you know, you just use that, and it's, you know, it sounds perfect. It sounds like it should. It's a sub. It doesn't have to be special. It doesn't have to be crazy dynamic. It just has to give you that low bottom end feel that, you know, makes you kind of feel warm inside type of a thing, I guess. But yeah, let's get back into this. That's basically what I do for all that stuff. That's why the groups are the way they are. That's why they're all a bit different. And I mean, there's nothing in them that's special. You know, they're just groups, and they allow you to put something on the bus to mix the entire group as a whole, as opposed to having to mix everything individually. I mean, you still should mix everything individually, but I mean, obviously you want them all to sound like they're glued together and sound good together. And if you do it each individually and then once in the master, your work is severely reduced overall, at least in my opinion, from my experience. Okay, so let's get to the leads. My leads here are a bit different. Let's pull up the leads section. My leads, I used a bit of a change for this because I didn't want to keep, you know, changing my MIDI, copying it over if I did changes or whatever. And also changing my automation and copying it down essentially, because it's tedious work. I mean, let's see here. Automation. I mean, this one doesn't have as much as it should, but I mean, it has a little bit of automation, and we'll go down to the second one here, lead 2. It used to have far more automation. I guess it doesn't. I take it back. This just has a filter cut off. But no, it just keeps me from having to do automation over and over again, especially if I edit it or change it. It's kind of tedious to go back and forth if you are, at least in my opinion it is. But yeah, basically what I did today, or for this track, is went and... Let's go over here and check on my leads. I have my main lead sound, and then I have my lead mono sound. And what the mono sound is the same as whatever the lead instrument is that I use, and I take away all the stereo panning or effects that it may or may not have, and I will bolster it with a kind of like whatever the main synth sound is, synth wave. So if it's like a sine wave or a sawtooth or I don't know, a square, triangle, whatever it is, I will add more emphasis to that sound and just even it out. So what I do for this exactly is, you have the main sound. Let's mute this. This is the main sound. A with it added. It makes it a little bit more towards the, the middle of like what you're hearing. I do recommend headphones also. I know it's a bit late in the game for me to say that, but what else? But yeah, it allows it to be right up in front, and it hits your ears where it should. And if this is used on a mono setup, or like a DJ uses it or something, I mean, not necessarily this track, but just in general, it just sounds better. And I mean, not everybody has the best of equipment, or they're listening on an iPhone, or they're listening on something that just uses a mono speaker. It's really nice to have that in there, so like if they're listening, they don't lose any color that they would that you would normally have if you put headphones on or something. But yeah, here's what I do for this. Let's get into it. As you can see, for the mono section here, because I have nothing, as you saw, on the first lead at all, it's just the lead sound itself, and nothing else is necessary for it, because it is not crazy, it's not, bad, it doesn't have anything that I need to get rid of. It's just a really good sounding synth, or sound for this, anyway. So what I cut off 35 dB, just because it's unnecessary noise. I do this to basically everything that may or may not have a bass area, or just random noise. It's not necessary. Especially in mono, you don't really need a lot of bottom end because you don't have the room for it. So yeah, you just get rid of it. And I have a tool that just affects the volume. It allows me to change it a bit more in depth, add automation to it without having to disturb the main volume that I have set, which is, I don't even know what number is this, which is, negative 12.8. So I can just edit this, give it more, give it less, do that without having to just go through and, let's say I want to change this later, and I'm doing, a main overhaul of, the volume on each tracks for, towards the end of the mixing process. I don't want to do that. I just want to have a tool or have a device that allows me to do that separately. So everything is individualized and everything is set. So if I do a whole, take everything down in the leads down by 1 dB, I don't want it to be a massive thing to deal with automation, and I can just deal with it here. But yeah, here's what I do. This is a little cool thing about Bitwig. I can pull the MIDI and the automation straight over from lead 1. As you can see, it's set to lead 1. I did the same thing here on lead 2 mono. It is pulled over from lead 1. It just pulls the MIDI over, and it can pull over automation or whatever else it is. Same thing over here. I do another 35 dB cut. Not that it's necessary or not, but that is what I do. I also on the lead group bus, or whatever you want to call it. I also have a neutron preset as well, or not really preset, it's kind of one that I'm modified a bit here and there to fit this sound, or fit these, sounds. Bit of, compression here. Nothing in the upper end. I did that a little bit, oh well. And, cut off again. 125 hertz, or 123 hertz. Just gets rid of some unnecessary noise, as I've always said. As you can see again over here, compression, top, and mid-range, basically full mid-range. Just gets rid of the unnecessariness, because, I mean, this is a square wave. It has a lot of unnecessary upper noise. I mean, it's a really good sound, but, there's noise. And I have a second compressor for the bottom end that's just, a second one. It's a bit, less fast, or it's a bit faster, sorry, not less fast. But yeah, yep, and a bit of an exciter too. It just, it gives it that sound. Let's turn this off and listen. See? It's a bit more, flat sounding. It's just not as good. Sounds a little bit more gritty, a little bit more, like it should be messed up. It's kind of like a busted oscillator. And yeah, that's how I get that. I mean, there's nothing else to it. I mean, I don't do anything special other than I did the mono tracks. Let's go over here to check this out and move on. mono. It's a little bit more stereo, as you can tell. And with the mix, as you heard there, I have this last one here. Actually, I should probably turn one thing off, just because it takes up a lot of resources when that one's on. All right, that's really all I need to turn off. But yeah, as you can see, I have lead 5 here. I mean, there's technically a lead 4, but it just comes in at the build-up, and it's kind of not relevant. It just gives you that bottom end ARP sound that, you know, you kind of listen to that ARP. But here, I'll actually just demonstrate this while I am talking about it, so it makes sense. It's just a more fat sound. You can't really tell it, but you can kind of feel that top end of the sound, and that's what it is. But yeah, getting on to lead 5 here. Let's see here. It's really subtle. This is like something I added in towards the end of the project. It's just that. You can't really tell. It's just mixed in there to be a little bit above everything else, but not too much. It's another kind of, you know, saw wave, but, you know, a little bit with distortion. And it just adds a little bit to the track. I mean, it gives that detail that says, you know, this part here is different from, you know, I guess this one here. Which, you know, it's kind of, you know, that one's fine for that portion, but you kind of want to build up to it and have it be, and be a little bit more, you know, not necessarily epic, but just, you know, better overall. But yeah, that is what I do for the leads. Nothing else is really done here whatsoever. I mean, there's just low pass filters, tools, and yeah, that's really a pitch shifter on 5 just to bring it up an octave, just to make it a bit easier. When I was messing around to figure, you know, what I wanted where. All right, we've gone through that. Now let's check out. I think I did a little bit for my keys here, yeah, for the piano section, which I didn't do a lot of for this track. I mean, I was not really into the piano for this one. I didn't really feel it needed it as much. Let's go here because it's got nothing special to it. It's just got a filter on it. It's got a note velocity because it's a pain to always go through and set velocity when you're, you know, messing around with piano keys. So I always just set this up and it just turns everything to 100, and I can deal with it then, you know, later if I so want to or not. It has a tool on it as well to bring in the volume towards, I think it's the beginning, but yep, have that there. And other than that, on this track, I have under group, I have Neutron 2 once again. As I said, you're going to be seeing a lot of the same stuff here. And it's just a little bit subtle on the bottom end, a little bit subtle on the upper end, and a little bit of a high shelf. Nothing special to it. If you're curious, I have some reverb added to it off of the main Omnisphere preset, and then I have a little bit of shine, which is Valhalla, and I have a key delay, which I showed off last time in the previous video that I made. But yeah, and then it cuts off there. But yeah, I mean, it's super simple. There's nothing special to it. I mean, it's just ever so slightly getting it there, getting it to sit in the mix where you want it to. I don't want it to be super forward. I just want it to be kind of under the sound for this track. If I wanted it to sit more in the front, I'd raise a little bit of the high end on the Neutron preset there. Not preset, it's not even a preset. EQ here. I would raise the high end a little bit over here with an upward compression, and I would also raise the high shelf, and I would only give it maybe 1 or 2 more dB of overall volume, and then deal with the rest of the track so this isn't too blaring, and the noise that it would actually produce from the reverb won't overtake the rest of the, you know, sound or the space that you have to work with. But yeah, I mean, that is basically it for the keys. I mean, there's not much, you know, difference here. I mean, the same principle that I apply up here to, you know, this Neutron 2 applies to the bottom, to the keys, and you're just basically getting everything to sit where it needs to sit. Let's get to the pads here, which are a little bit different for me, but not really sounding, but just in their simplicity, I guess you could say. I have a compressor on them. That's how I dealt with the volume of these, because I wanted them to be a little bit more forward and apparent, but they're simple. So just put the mixer here so I can easily turn off the LFO tool. You see, just a little bit of compression. Took off a little bit of the bottom end here, and I left the rest alone. There's not much more to it. There's dynamics. They come in as a side chain, specifically to when the buildup is coming on. Let's turn the LFO tool back on and click this up here so automation works appropriately. It's just when you have the buildup here. You should probably turn kick on as well. Something like that. It's super subtle. I don't have it crazily done. The dynamics. You see it comes in here. Probably helps if I turn my kicks on. See, just ever so subtly. It's just there to, you know, give that emphasis that, you know, it is ducking out of the way. So the kicks are more up in front so you can hear them and, you know, kind of feel them until you get to the riser, which, you know, brings everything together, mashes everything out, and zones it out to the point where the vocal, you know, hits, and you're just like, oh, wow, you know, change. But yeah, oops, no mute there. But yeah, I mean, that is it. I didn't do anything else crazy. It's just how I mix there. Nothing special. And next, let's see what I have here. My bass. This is a little bit different, I guess, considering the rest of it. Let's pull up the mixer. All right, here. We'll start off with the groups side itself instead of, you know, the sounds, and we'll go down the line that way. What I have here is I have a 35, you know, hertz dB, whatever you want to call it, cutoff. It's hertz. And I have the basically fundamental area of where the kick hits, and I like mine a little bit wider than most people. A lot of people like to have this a little bit more narrow. Since I'm not saving this, I will show it off. A lot of people kind of like to do this, and, you know, not necessarily 70 dB, but they kind of do like this. Now, I like it to duck completely because I don't know. I don't want any of that, you know, the bass to get in the way. I like it, you know, just to come through crystal clear. And I have a supercharger on this. I have this on every bass group that I do. I like it. It just adds a little bit of volume. It's like an overall compressor that I, you know, it is an overall compressor, but it's one that I use that gives me a little bit of an analog fuzz feel. And, you know, I like it. And it keeps everything from sounding, you know, specifically, you know, oh, that's Spire, or that's Silent. Oh, that's, you know, Serum. And it's this preset from this pack or some nonsense like that. I'm like, I'm not into that. I like changing the presets if I use a preset. And I also like, you know, changing the overall sound and feel to, you know, be my own. I'm not a person that likes, you know, use other people's stuff. I don't feel good about it. All right, let's start with bass one here. It's the very first one. I did something a little bit different here. It's simple, it's flat, it's not over the top. I wasn't going for anything crazy with it. I just wanted it to sit there and fit. So I have a 35 dB cut. I rolled off the top of the bottom end like I did, you know, before. And I also have a little bit of a small cut here, a riser in the top end, and a cut at the, the higher, what is it? It's high mid frequency range, I guess. HMF. And then the actual high frequency range over here at 8K, I basically have it lowered just ever so slightly. And then I have a high cutoff, basically a wall, just to get rid of all this nonsense here. You don't need any of this mud over here. It's just unnecessary because the sub takes care of it. This you can't really hear, but it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. I mean, you can leave it there, but it just makes your track have less room to work in. So I'm the type of person that likes to get rid of it. I also have an SSL here, and, you know, it's ever so slightly, you know, the high mid frequencies, the high frequencies are cut off. I have a little bit to the low frequencies of a boost and a little bit of a boost to the lower mid frequencies for that. It's nothing you have to do. I don't, you know, it's something new for me. I just tried it out this time. I liked it. Without it, without this, it's just fat, which is nice, but no one's going for it. Yep, subtlety. It's what I like. For the Vox here, that you kind of hear at the beginning. It's got a note pitch shifter, so I just raise it up an octave, just so you can hear. I think I actually lowered on this one. I have a filter, if I can pop it up. And let's pull this up in this area where it's actually apparent. Cut out the bass end. It's unnecessary. Just waist up here. Give it a little bit of a raise, and duck off the super high frequencies because they're completely unnecessary for this part because the synths take care of the high range, so it's just not needed. Yeah, that is all it is. I mean, I have an EQ for the very end of it, which is just slightly different, but I mean, that's only for listening to the very, very end of the track. Other than that, I mean, it's nothing. It just cuts off, you know, more than is normal to give it a kind of high end. It just basically turns into a filter. But yeah, I have a tool on it, technically two of them used in different portions of, you know, the song. One over here, one over here. I think one's actually used at this end. Yeah, it's actually used over here. But yeah, that is everything for that. I mean, there's not much to it. You don't need to do anything crazy. It just has to sit well with everything else. So that goes with this bottom one. Sounds terrible on its own like that. Sounds fine there. Bass comes through. Yeah, let's say you want the bass, you know, at this point to be a little bit better, or not better, just louder to, you know, build up. You normally put on like a filter and, you know, go like that. Or what you can do, I'm only going to show it on this portion here, is just because it would probably take forever. Bounce in place. Do this. Add it, you know, one stage, maybe one bar over, just so it makes a little bit more sense. But then you can just, you know, cut the volume and have it set up, and you can do that, you know, the entire duration, kind of like what I did over here for these things. And it makes it so much easier than, you know, always doing a filter, setting up your automation, setting up on and off. But yeah, it's just one of those nice things that you can do. It adds a little bit more depth, and I mean, as I always say, the longer your, you know, your tails basically are, and it builds up to it, the better your track will sound overall. I mean, a lot of people like it when stuff comes in subtly and they don't really notice it, and then they go back to listen to it a second time. There's like, I didn't know that was there. That's the type of feeling you're going for. A lot of things, you know, it's always nice to have some stuff that surprises you and hits you right in the face, but obviously certain things of it, certain parts of the track, do subtly. And it will actually, it'll really pay off in the end. But yeah, let's get out of the basses. I mean, we've basically gone through all of them. There's nothing really on the third one. It's just for this breakdown. There's nothing special to it. It just gave it the sound I wanted. It just had a slightly fatter sound. I mean, this one could have done it, but I didn't want to tweak it because I want to use it later, and I could have, you know, duplicated and all that good stuff. But it's not for me. I just wanted something there, different synth altogether, different sound, different distortion, and yeah. That is the bass side. And basically, sub is just the sub as I've shown off. I mean, it has technically not in use for this track. I have a neutron filter that I use kind of. But yeah, for this, as you see, I cut off a little bit more. This is the group of the sub, by the way. I cut off at 40 hertz for the sub just to get rid of some of the unnecessary noise. And I have it ducking down here with the low shelf. And I have also the kick area, I guess the kick fundamental drop is how I like to call it. It's a terrible name, but yeah. And I did this for one reason. I was getting clipping, only because the kick here, it has one area of it where it kind of clips. You would normally get rid of that by changing the attack on your synth, but it's just one of those things that I'm like, well, I can easily get rid of the sound that is doing this. Clipping anyway. I don't know if you can hear this. If you're using headphones, definitely be able to hear it, but yeah. As you hear that. You can kind of get rid of that if you mess with the attack, but I mean, for what I needed to do, it wasn't necessary. You never hear it, you never feel it, but yeah. But yep, it got rid of the clipping, and it got rid of it being out of sync with what I was going for. But yeah, let's get back into this. That is basically it for the bass. Did I do compression? I think I did a C2. Nope, I did a one of these. I did basically a light EQ, flat 5 bands, and it's just on the sweeps. I wanted to cut off a little bit of the bottom, a little bit of the top end, give it a little bit of a riser here, and you know, it's just there. But it didn't need to be anything special. It's just when let's get over here. Sounds fine. Like nothing else needs to be there. It's got an LFO tool as well, so side chaining. I turn that, and it's the LFO tool has automation as well, basically, so that you can I get rid of it for the drop section, other than for when the build comes in again, because there's no reason for you to have, you know, any of that here. I mean, it wouldn't make sense. Same. Perfectly okay. But yeah, when a kick comes in, I definitely add, you know, LFO2 again, or a side chain. Just depends how much work I want to put into it, or if I just want to test the waters type of a thing. But yeah, that is that. Down sweeps, I don't have anything on down sweeps. FX, which is just the, this guy here. Just, you know, simple. Nothing really needs to be done for that. It's just that. Just, you know, tune your volume to it and, you know, enjoy. Nothing's on it. Crashes, I have a C2 compressor from Fab Filter. I'm just using hard hitting. So basically when, let's see, here's one that hits pretty decently. Let's do that. Let's solo. When this comes in. Same, doesn't even need to cut there. It's just a little bit of a drop, if you can tell. Let's see, over here maybe. Same, just ever so slightly. Nothing crazy, nothing, you know, that bad. It just cuts off those top peaks that you don't need, you don't hear. Unless you really want it to be sharp and kind of in somebody's ear, you don't really need those peaks. And I just kind of like to cut them off with that. Essentially, it's a limiter that I'm using it for, but, you know, a compressor is just easier, and I can add a little bit of volume without distorting the overall sound if I need to. I have one on the explosions as well, which I will go here and demonstrate as well. The goal isn't kind of here. Solo. Let's pull up the compressor as well. I don't know why they keep appearing in the bottom left. But yeah, a lot of compression for this. Makes it thick and fattens it up because it's just a thick preset, but you modify this a little bit down here. You modify this a little bit over here. Your high frequencies and your low frequencies, just to, you know, to fit the mix, to fit what you're doing, and, you know, cut out what you don't want. So let's listen. That's what's getting cut out. Just all that unnecessary noise. And yeah, I do go through and, you know, tune the volumes of them. But I mean, when you put them all together, they all resonate basically with each other, and you get, you know, chaos. I mean, I could do it with less, but I like variation. I like it to sound like one falls off and it's like, oh, the upper portion of it falls away. The lower portion of it stays in, and the mid-range, you know, just kind of fades off somewhere in, you know, kind of the middle, and that type of a thing. It's what I like to do. I've always been that way with it. But yeah. And as you can see, the Vox or voice, I call it Vox just because it's easier it's faster to type in, and then voice there. I don't know. I don't, you know, discriminate against me doing, random word association, or not association, just random words. But yeah, for this, I use a multi-band compressor. I just use a preset here for DS and enhance. And next, I use another multi-band compressor. Again, this one here is to expand, yeah, just to expand it. I mean, it doesn't really do much else. The goal isn't to live forever. But yeah, let's solo this. And I also have on here a another cut. I cut off the bottom end of this vocal. The goal isn't to live forever. Because it's too much. The goal isn't to live forever. Makes it a bit more dry. Cut off a little bit of bottom end. And I add a little bit to the top end, and I cut off the very top-ish area because the S's will kill your ears. The goal isn't to live forever. The goal isn't to live forever. But yeah, that's all I do there. Second one, I have a, what do you want to call this? It's a DS, which is a, yeah, just a de-esser. Another one, essentially, the goal isn't to live forever. And this one just takes off certain things that pop up a bit later, and I can you know, basically choose what range I want this to come in at. So let's come over here. The goal is to create. As you can see, there's something there. You would normally never hear it, but let's turn this off. The goal is to create that S sound there. The goal is to create. And this just makes it sound a bit flatter, but more even, and not so just apparent that there's, you know, an S sound. And then I have my precision reverb, essentially, or reflection engine as they call it, that just adds in a little bit of a top end verb echo. The goal is to create. That's without. The goal is to create. It just gives it a little bit more of a ghostly sound almost. I'm not really going for that, but you know, it is there. And yeah, I mean, that's all there is. I mean, there's nothing special to the vocals other than that. And I mean, I didn't do anything on the main track other than this is something to each. Each one has an whoa. So you can kind of see over here on the left, each one has its own volume or gain depending on where it's at in itself. Because this over here is really quiet.
Something that will.
And then you have the section in front of it that's way too loud. So
The goal is to create something that will.
and I just wanted to even it out because it sounds weird by itself because you can't hear the other portion of it.
The goal isn't to live forever.
Yeah, basically everything kind of has its own to fit in where it needs to fit in. And the volume on the track is pretty much, stagnant, and I deal with it on basically a sample by sample, pretense, if you will. And then I have this one over here.
Close your eyes.
But yeah, it's pretty simple. There's nothing else going on there that's going through all the tracks. Now, let's go through basically the final mixing preparation, I guess, stage, if you will, of what I do. Let's turn off this automation nonsense because it's not really necessary. And shrink this stuff, and we will pull up the other window, actually. All right, so we will start with the fake master window, which is where I put stuff that, I would normally put on the master, but in terms of cleanliness, I don't want to have to scroll on either one of these, so I will add one to the other. But if it's something that I would prefer to, hear right away before I start doing anything with the master channel, I'll add it to the Sudo master, if you will, where I can deal with volume and all that good stuff all at once without having to mess with the original. And it's just a preference. It's nothing you have to do, but it's something that I do. I use a UAD channel strip for this, and I do a little bit of a high pass filter at 32 hertz, and it's set to 0. But it basically what this does is allows when I apply the compressor, it basically allows it so it's not affected. It doesn't affect the sound. It makes it pretty clear when it raises it because it's just a compressor. Let's see. Here. Without.
Close your eyes.
With it. Without. Yeah, it's relatively simple. It's nice. It works. It gives it a clean sound. I also did a little bit of work here up in the mid frequencies. I cannot talk today. 640 hertz, and it's just a little bit of a bell, and it's minus 0.7 dB. But yeah. I also always use an Ozone 8 or 7 or 6, whatever you have. I use the dynamic EQ, and I do mid and side, work. You can just use the regular presets, and you go in and modify it a little bit to your tastes, if you so choose. But I recommend, just doing what you feel is best for your track. You don't have to go crazy with it.
Close your eyes.
But I do recommend for every track to definitely go through and mid-side it. You can do it any way you want. You can do it with a equalizer. A lot of them usually have a mid-side variation of them. I know the built-in one here does not. You normally just put it with that one mid-side preset I showed you under the subs. Cannot remember today. And I have on this, because one part of the track has a really weird sound that has a high pitch, just nothingness, and it's coming from nothing. So I went through every single track individually to try and find it, and muted everything, unmuted everything. It was honestly like 3 hours of work that went nowhere. So I just put a DS on it, and it took care of it. But yeah, it's ever so slightly on. It's not taking anything away from the rest of the track, other than when it needs to. But yeah. It's something I've never used before on it because I've always thought, it'd be terrible for it, but nothing wrong with that. And yeah, that is what I do on the fake master. So when I come over here to the real master, as you can see, I have console recall, which is just to my UAD stuff. It just allows it to recall the positions that I put. Like if I change a knob or something, it's how it recalls it and stuff like that. It's weird, but yeah. I have an EQ2, so let's pull this up, which is just at 35 hertz, if I remember right. Yeah, 35 hertz on this one. And I do this several times on this track, you'll notice, but yeah, let's get into it. For the first time ever, I used a solid EQ on this track just to test it out, because this was one of those tracks that was kind of more experimental than, for, some crazy label submission type thing. What I did here was gave it a little bit of 0.5 dB to the upper frequency or the high frequencies, took off minus 0.9 dB to the high mid frequencies, low mid frequencies. I gave it plus 0.2 or 2.3 dB, and I took off quite a bit of the lower frequencies, and I'll explain why I did that later. And I did modify a little bit of the bottom here just to fix it to the track that I'm using, and I never touched the high and low pass filters. But yep, that is that. Let's go over here to Ozone. What I did here is I cut off the bottom end, so there's nothing there. I gave it a brick wall, and I gave it a brick wall on the top end because honestly it's nothing but useless noise, and I wanted the space for mastering and just to have. But yeah, let's get rid of that. But yeah,
Close your eyes.
nothing's necessary over there. Over here, this is useless noise as well because it's like the 40, you know, the 40 hertz range, and it just helps get rid of it. And over here, I also have a Neutron 2 where I do something pretty much similar, and I kind of counteract what I did with the solid EQ, but I like the contrast I got from doing this because originally it was going to just be one or the other, but I liked this one, you know, when they were together. So I took off a little bit of the top end, kind of like what I did with Ozone there, and I gave a little bit to the upper mid frequencies, a little bit to the lower mid frequencies, and just a subtle variation to 3 over here, which I gave it, you know, 1 dB up in a pretty decent range. But yeah, cut it off again with did a little bottom end work here, and I gave another cut off here at 40 hertz, just because why not? It's not gonna hurt me any. It doesn't change the sound overall for me. But yeah, I also used center stereo, which is mid-side. I mean, if you want to pick up something that's pretty cheap, I think this is like 35 bucks on Wave's website. I definitely recommend it if you don't want to get into like the in-depth mid-side right now at this point of your, you know, what you want to do. This will definitely help what you're trying to accomplish for getting, you know, where you want this stuff. So let's show this off real quick.
Close your eyes.
All right. It's weird on headphones, I'm not gonna lie. And then punch. Just where you want it. But yeah, it allows you to do that. I mean, you can take some away here, take some and add some wherever you want to do. I mean, I never really mess with these other than just to solo, you know, the mids and the sides. But yeah, that's what you can do there. I like it. It's just something that if I want to do something really quickly and I want it to be efficient, I will definitely use that. I mean, I do some major mid side over here, but for some reason, it's, you know, going from one to the other. I don't want to take chances of just random, not artifacts, but I guess you can call it something with technology where the ones and zeros are slightly lost in the process, and it just sounds weird. Like, I mean, it's not necessary.
Close your eyes.
But it's something I do. I'm gonna both off. Better. A little bit better. Ozone is definitely better at it, but I mean, more work goes into that one. But yeah, and I also have this, which is the main thing that I use for all of my mixing. It's on every track that I use. It is my absolute favorite. It is a UAD UAD plugin, so you definitely need UAD gear to run this. It won't run, you know, without it. But getting on to what it does.
Close your eyes.
I use a pseudo maximizer kind of a thing, where I will go into, when I'm, you know, making a track, I really never mess with the mid-range equalizer. I do change it ever so slightly if I ever feel I need to, but I do most of that work elsewhere. And this is pretty much set depending on whatever preset you kind of choose to what you want in the basics. You can kind of change it slightly if you need to. I don't feel like I ever need to, so I don't mess with it. I mean, I can shut it off.
Close your eyes.
No change. So I honestly don't mess with that. What I do is down here where I mess with my boost, my attention, and, you know, so forth of the low end, the high end, and the low frequency and the high frequency. That's all I mess with.
Close
and
your
figure
eyes.
out where, you know, do I want this track to have more of a bassy sound, or do I want this track to be more of an upper mid-range, upper, you know, like a high frequency sounding track? I usually go for the higher end. I like bass, don't get me wrong, but I mean, I feel like trance is more about the experience and the journey rather than it being about some, you know, kind of dubstep like bass experience. But if I do a track that has more bass in it, like a, you know, like a bass breakdown, or like the bass line is super important, I definitely put this between, you know, kind of like 3 and 4, and I will drop this one down to just under 4, and it, you know, it gives me that emphasis that I want. But I mean, I tune this to each song to give me the emphasis that I'm looking for, and then, you know, yep, that's basically that. Then I go in and I use tonal balance, and I mean, I just use a very basic one because, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not mixing to match other people's tracks. I'm mixing to match technically my own, but to get a sound that you don't hear somewhere else. And it's more, I want kind of where is the industry going and where am I at?
Close your eyes.
And this is where the cutoff is, as you can see. I don't really care what other people are doing at that range. It's not what I'm doing, as you can see. And the reason why I was cutting it off so much in the lower end is because I was just clipping here and I was just not into it. But as you can see, I'm fine. I guess I'm gonna be bored. Or broad, sorry, not bored. Oh, dyslexia. But yep, and if I so choose, I can, you know, edit the master, edit the synth bus, and, you know, figure it out, fix it as I need to straight from here at the end of the project. And that's why I usually have like a Neutron 2 on each track, or at least each bus, and I can go in and tune everything to where I need it to set. I also, I mean, I can use Neutron 2 here as well to do it. I'll actually show this. If you have, let's say, Fruity Loops or FL Studio, whatever they're calling it nowadays, you can come in here and
Close your eyes.
see where your frequencies are mismatched. I mean, this doesn't make sense because it's on the master, but you can see, you know, where you want to turn something down in, where you want something up at, and you can see right up here where, you know, it's not working. I mean, I recommend always listening to your tracks. Your ears will always be better than, you know, any software will tell you, but the software is amazing and it will get you really close in the ballpark. But you always should go in, listen with your ears, you know, and, you know, figure it out. Tonal balance as well. Always listen to what you're doing. I mean, I like to use tonal balance if I've been mixing for, let's say, 3-4 hours and I've lost all, you know, idea of what the sound is overall. Like, I've just kind of, my ears have turned to mush, you could say. Instead of taking a break, I'll use this to keep going for a couple more hours, get in the range, and then I'll take a break for, you know, a day, or, you know, go sleep it off, come back to it, and then listen to what I did. And, you know, I'd save it under, you know, version 3.5, you know, tonal balance change, or TBC change type of a thing. And, you know, come back to that one. I'd save one right before I did the change under the standard one, which would be for this one version 4. And yeah, that's the type of thing I do to get my mixes to sound kind of what they should be. But yeah, I mean, that's how I save it off, test it out, and get it just right. Because in all honesty, you can work for, you know, as long as you want 24 hours straight, and your track will probably not sound that good. I mean, unless you're, you know, one of those, you know, people that have the gift or whatever it is. I clearly am not, but yeah. But yep, I like to use Isotope Insight. It tells me where I want to go. I always say -7 usually for certain things, but I usually set to that, -14. It just depends where you're going for. Certain services will tell you differently. iTunes will tell you differently. Spotify will tell you differently. Pandora will tell you differently. Apple Music, not so much. It's basically the same as iTunes, but basically a little bit less loud because of compression due to sending it over cellular and it not being just a straight download. But yeah, basically I like to use this to get in the ballpark of the loudness frequencies that I need to be in.
Close your eyes.
It's my go-to one, so you can see the clipping, but yeah, you know, -14, exactly. It's for the drop, it's where I want to be. But yeah, I also, on this track for the first time, used the Waves edition of this Essential thing. I like this one over here, the Isotope one, because I get basically a spectrum analyzer. I get a spectrogram, which is just
Close your
nuts.
eyes.
It just lets you see everything you want to kind of see. Let's see here. It gives me a sound field and it gives me loudness history, which is nice. So you can go through your entire track.
Close your eyes.
Timer at the bottom, the LUFS at the side here, and it tells you when you go over the line that you don't want to go over. So, you know, this is technically -7, but you know what I mean. It gives you the, you know, the insight that you want. Let's hear what that sounds. And you get a sound field, which is nice if you're, you know, if you're into it. You can change this up as well to, which one is it? Not that. There we go. Change it to whatever you want it to be.
Close your eyes.
So, yep, same, basically same as Ozone and that front. But yeah, I like to use these two. I use this one for the first time. I really like it. I mean, it doesn't allow me to go to -7. I mean, -9 is not terrible, but I mean, I understand it. But yeah, to each their own. Everyone is different. It's a good loudness meter. I know it's actually probably cheaper than the isotope variation, but yeah, I recommend it. I recommend both actually. And then at the very end of the stage, I have a limiter that I use. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, my track is already limited, or the volume is lowered over here in the far left of the main one, which I'm at for this track, -3 dB. My vocals, not so much. I change them to go wherever I want. They're basically just -0.4, and the original is, yeah, -10 still, -10, and I guess there's 2 here. 12. So I mean, I don't go over at all. I'm usually always under, and I'm under the loudness that I really want to be at. So when I go into Ozone later, the actual standalone software to master, I can, just work and have all the headroom in the world, and get the quality of the the product that I want. But yeah, that is what I do. Sorry if that kind of drugged on and I rambled. Apologies. But yeah, that is how I mix. If you want, I mean, this is a relatively simple project. Let me try and pull up a little bit more. I won't pull it up fully, but I'll pull it up so you can kind of see. If you are curious of, like a full project that I would do where I would spin it off in something that I would say I would possibly send to a label or something. I mean, I never did, but it's one that has that possibility. Here we are with Summer Radiance. As you can see, everything here is far more in depth. Let's see here. Oops. All right. There we go. Leads. First lead here. It's got far more work to it. It's got a compressor limiter. Let's just double click here. Let's see. We got a EQ, compressor, high pass filter, a compressor. Or sorry. Yeah, compressor there. What is this one? Oh, sorry. Volcano, which is a filter. Second lead, similar thing, but it has a multi-band EQ. I mean, this is like, if you're going to go and do a project that you're really serious about, you're going to go through and be very meticulous about every track. And I highly recommend that. But if you're doing a track for yourself, enjoy it first. Because if you don't enjoy it, it's no fun. And again, as you can see, Neutron 2 on the lead group. Synths, Neutron 2 again. The main group here, which is 3. And similar to what I did in the last one, but they're just separate in this one because it's just what I was going with. But yep, it's got a compressor on those 3. And the last one, if I remember correctly, yeah, it does have an EQ as well, and the MIDI CC pulls it from the MIDI CC for it because it's a synth master one. But yep, that is what I do. Top end Pluck is slightly different. It's got a pancake on it, so it will hit your left and right ears with an LFO essentially at a rate, without me having to put like an LFO tool on. Not an LFO tool, but an LFO on the pan for the main track. It's just kind of nice, and then I can, turn it up, turn it down for how much I want, rather than being a speed thing or whatever it is. Multi-band EQ compressor, Pluck as well for this. Just an EQ 5 because it didn't need as much, so it's just got a little bit less work, cut off the bottom end, and a little bit of rise to 4 here, which is at 3.6 kilohertz. But yeah, piano, as you can see, Neutron 2 again. It's got a little bit more work as well, Neutron 2 on it itself, to give it the sound I wanted. So if you've heard Summer Radiance, I mean, you'll know it. Pad, far more work, far more pads for this track because it deemed them necessary in a way, just because the ideas were there and it really felt well, or just flowed really well. You got your bass pad, your sub pad, your standard pad, your mid pads, your wisp pad, your big large ones for like when the drop comes in, and then one more here for the breakdown that I added in that just adds in kind of like a bottom end kind of, not twang, but I don't know, it sounds like, you'd have to hear it. You can kind of hear it in there. It's really subtle. Then for the bass line here, as you can see, I'll just keep going. I mean, as you can see, everything here a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more of everything. EQ2 to take out the 40 hertz on this, or 40 hertz. And yeah, I mean, intro bass, what's at the very beginning and what's at the mid range. I mean, this is when you're really going in, you want everything to be just so. And then you have your sub, which is just one sub, nothing special. I have my sweeps and effects because I need a separate group for this because the volume is just nuts. There's just way more work than needed. So Neutron 2 there, dynamics on the sweeps. It's the same thing as using an LFO tool. This one also has a pancake, so it goes left and right when one of them hits you. This is actually a separate sound, actually. It just fits there because it's a riser. It's that first sound you hear during the breakdown that's like twangy kind of sound that hits your left and right ear. That is that one. FX, nothing really done, just a compressor, and nothing compressor to crashes, sorry, nothing done to FX. To the like sub bass and explosions, nothing. Vox, a little bit different here, neutron tube, multiband EQ, two multibands, de-esser, and the last EQ, which comes on at the very end. It's got a different EQ at the very beginning, and a second, what is two? I don't remember what I set that to. I actually have no idea what that is. Can't tell without opening. And this one has two Vox or vocal sections. So yep, and there's nothing over there. And let's see. I have the glue, and I have Fab Filter Pro over here as well, which I think is Q. Yep, it's a equalizer. Neutron 2 as well. Kicks. I don't think I did anything special here. Yep. Nope. I did. Nope. Yeah, I did actually. It's hard to remember. Yep, EQ on the kicks, compressor as well, and a separate compressor for that. Separate one here for the one that comes during the breakdown, the dubstep one. One of them is a dubstep one. I think it's this one. I actually didn't mark them, so that's surprising. It's got a, let's see here. Will it tell me? There we go. It's got a Q2, multiband, and a compressor as well. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you go through, you tweak literally everything. I have DJ EQs on all of these. I do this on all of my percussionary sections, and it gets you where you want to go. I can actually show that over here, the difference. Maybe. There we go. Let's open percussion. As you can see here, DJ EQ, once again.
Close your eyes.
Turn this off. Turn this off. See, a lot of the mid-range comes through on this one. Gets rid of it, but it's still there. Yep. I mean, it's just subtle stuff like that. So it builds out a track. It makes it feel like, you know, it has a place and it fits there. But yeah, that's what I do for this stuff. I mean, there's not much else that I really do. I just go through it and get really meticulous about it. And I'll add, I'll take away. And this part here, like when you go to do this section, this is what took me probably 2 weeks to do of, you know, listening, not listening, listening, not listening, taking some time off just so I can get away from it, coming back to it and, you know, working on it again. I mean, it could be done faster, but the quality wouldn't be there. Or the quality that I would want would not be there. And I mean, you can go further. Like, I mean, in all honesty, I could definitely have taken this further and gone and put far more work into it than I did. As you can see over here in the far right in the main master, there is no solid EQ or any of that. It's just pretty simple. Same stuff with the UAD plugins, tonal balance, and insight. So none of the new stuff that I used on the last one. But yeah. But yeah, I mean, this is how I mix. If you're curious about like high-end stuff, how I get rid of that, I mean, I honestly just, well, I will use an EQ most likely on like the master, one of them, and I will tune to it. And if it's something else getting in the way, cut it away. And then go from there. I mean, if it doesn't work, let's say you let's say you have mud in the upper end, cut out your bass side and cut out a little bit of the bass side of like your leads. Just put an EQ on those groups or buses if you can. It just makes it easier, and just, you know, copy it over, kind of like, you know, say I want to copy this to something else, you know, you just drag it, you know, or I guess I hold Option to do it. But yeah, and just, you know, copy it across and see where, you know, it fits to get rid of that mud. It gives you a little bit of an insight if your ears can't really tell. Or you can, you know, mute something to do it as well, but you don't get the same feel as, you know, just putting on like, you know, in the upper, let's see here, where's a, please say, is this a EQ? Yep, let's say you just want to cut, you know, what I would start with is probably around here, and let me set this to a high cut. Yep. And zero this out. And what I would do is most likely do something like this and tweak it. I'd put on like some sound, you know, and tune it to it first. And then I would drag it around to track by track or make doubles of it and drag it into, you know, my leads, what else would have bass sounds, my pads and my bass, and definitely the sub. I'd probably just mute the sub because I just assume it would probably be in the way. Because if you're going to tune your sub, you have to do it more in the lower range than the high range. But yeah, this would work for your normal bass sounds, like your normal, you know, just don't know, RP type basses or whatever you want to call them, your standard basses, and it will work for your pads. It will work for your, you know, your plucks, your leads, your arps, and stuff like that. You just kind of, you would take it down a little bit. So for me, like for what I would do, I'd probably do 12, you know, 12 hertz or something like that, 12 kilohertz, and you know, just go from there to 12K and maybe 13. You know, just you'd figure it out to your track. It just really depends. But yeah, that's what I would do, and it would help at least, I mean, it would help you get an idea of where you need to be, especially if you're working on headphones or something and you don't necessarily have the definition. I would definitely go with a way like that. It's super easy, it's built in, and it can give your ears a little bit. I recommend pink noise as well. Like, let's say you can't get your volumes exactly where you want them, put pink noise in one track and tune it until you can kind of just barely hear the sounds you want to hear, and go to the next track, and, you know, individually do it. I mean, that's every single thing you do. So that's your, you know, your crashes, your up sweeps, your down sweeps, and use pink noise, and it won't lead you astray because it is just a set sound. White noise, I mean, you can kind of use it, but I was never taught to use it that way, and I've never liked to use it with white noise, so that's just me. But yeah, I guess that would be everything, guys. I guess I'll have to talk to you guys all.